And just like that, training camp is here, which means it's a perfect time for the NFC West Huddle, catching up with all the experts from around the division. I'm Aaron Levine in Seattle, joined today by Keyshawn Ward in San Francisco, Blake Neiman in Phoenix, and welcoming Ryan Anderson from the LAFB Network in Los Angeles. Be sure to check out all their great Rams coverage at LAFBnetwork.com. Guys, let's get to the first question of the week. What's your favorite storyline from your team as training camp starts? Blake, we want to make sure that youth is served, so we'll start with you and the Cardinals.
Yeah, right away what jumped out is Marvin Harrison Jr. has bulked up big time. Put on 11 pounds over the offseason, weighed in at 209 last year in his rookie year. Just revealed that he's weighing in at 220 pounds right now. He credits that to eating a bigger breakfast. He said he wasn't usually a big breakfast guy, but now he's forcing himself to eat a lot more in the morning. And look, he came into his podium presser yesterday, and the biceps, the arms stood out right away. We saw it in OTAs too, and even Kyler Murray commented on it, and he was like, I thought it was an AI photo at first, but no, MHJ is looking for a prime breakout year in year two, and he's bulked up big time. Definitely expect some physicality from him out wide in Arizona.
Richard Saenz has always compared him to a Lamborghini. Maybe he might compare him to a Hummer at this point because he's a little bit more bulked up this year.
Or a muscle car Marv, maybe? Might have a nice ring to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Keyshawn, you're next. What's your favorite storyline at Niners camp?
Well, it's not my favorite, but it's actually the most intriguing storyline. I have to say the 49ers wide receiver room. You know, coming into camp, you know, the Niners already placed Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall on the PUP list. Then after the first day of practice, Jacob Cowan gets on the, you know, I think he's out for a little because of a hamstring injury. So now it's more rest for guys that's not proven in this system. So it could be a free agent who will just sign with Demarcus Robinson, or even a rookie, a raw rookie from Nebraska, Isaiah Nayer, or even most recently, let me get these names right, they had just signed Quintez Cephas from the Lions and Equanimeous St. Brown, Amon St. Brown's brother. And then most recently today, Gabe Davis, a former Jaguars wide receiver, he said he has interest playing for the Niners. So who is going to seize this moment in that wide receiver room to get more reps and become a key component in this offense? Because right now, Juwan Jennings is the only one that's established because the other receivers, they're not healthy right now.
So we got a lot of attention on the receivers so far. Ryan, you're up. What's your favorite storyline at Rams camp?
It is, what is this offense going to look like without Cooper Kupp? When he was drafted back in 2017, Sean McVay turned over his whole 12 personnel identity to go to this 11 personnel offense that he was so famous for and ran successfully. Cooper Kupp's gone. They're bringing in Terrence Ferguson, another tight end, to go along with Tyler Higbee. So there's going to be more 12 personnel packages. There's going to be 21 personnel packages. He's going to deviate from 11 personnel. It's going to look much different, and I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. But we're going to have to wait to see what that's going to look like exactly, because Matthew Stafford isn't practicing for the first 5 practices.
Yeah, a sore back at the age of 37. That's not going to be a storyline this year, is it?
No, not at all. McVay did differentiate between the elbow that he suffered with a couple years ago to this one. It's very, very different, apparently.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. My favorite storyline, not necessarily Cooper Kupp, although it is nice to have him up here in Seattle. Looking forward to seeing that this year. It's obvious from my perspective it is Sam Darnold because the jury still out on him. Is he a good quarterback or is he not a good quarterback? A fantastic season in Minnesota last year, but that's just 1 year out of 7 in this league. And I know the haters will continue to hate until he can do what he did last year and do it more consistently. You also have a new team with a new offense and in a division where he has to play the Rams twice, a team he lost to both times last year, including that wild card playoff game. The Vikings held to just 9 points in that loss. So we've heard the comparisons between Darnold and Geno Smith all offseason. The prevailing thought is that Geno is a better quarterback. But if Sam can take control of this offense, prove himself even equal to what Geno did here in Seattle, then I think it's vindication for the Seahawks because Darnold is 6 years younger. The Hawks are paying him less money than what Geno wanted and ultimately got with the Raiders. And they also got a third-round pick out of that trade, which ultimately netted them Jalen Milroe, which happens to be my second favorite storyline of this training camp because we're going to see a lot of Milroe and preseason games. I'm curious how differently he runs this offense, and even more curious to see how the Seahawks use Milroe during games this regular season, because I think he's more than a quarterback. He's a great weapon to have on situational downs. So for me, it's the quarterbacks during training camp. Sam Darnold first, Jalen Milroe second. My favorite two storylines at Seahawks training camp. Up next, what is the most underrated storyline of training camp? We'll start with you this time, Keyshawn. What are people overlooking or not giving enough attention to when it comes to the Niners training camp this year?
Oh, my God, who's going to win the kicking competition between Jake Moody and Greg Joseph? I mean, yesterday in the press conference, thankfully somebody asked Nick Bosa about it. Even Bosa, he laughed, he chuckled. He was like, you know what? This is probably the first time in my career I'm actually watching the kickers kick, because we got to know who's going to win it. And then after they asked asked Nick Bosa, then they asked George Kittle, and Kittle was like, you know what? That's been a pretty good point by Nick Bosa, because I think the players realize that is such a pivotal position on this team, because off the top of my head, you know, when they lost to the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland in 2023, or even last year against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when Jake Moody missed multiple kicks, or against Arizona in this NFC West. So that competition is really going to determine a lot for this team, because you got to be able to depend on your kicker when you really need him, when it matters.
So let's kick it on over to Ryan. Then you're next. What's the most underrated storyline of Rams training camp?
It's the offensive line. It doesn't look like there's a lot that's changed, but Alaric Jackson is suffering from blood clot issues. They're working through that issue. Rob Havenstein went through 2 procedures on each one of his shoulders. Cleanup procedures is what they called them. But at his age, injury is going to happen at some point probably. And then they bring back Coleman Shelton, who performed well in 2023 for them. Spent a year with Chicago. Didn't look great there. Can he just slot back in there and improve the offensive line? This team is going to be offensive line dependent. We were talking about Stafford at 37 years old. We got to keep him off the ground. He was the 3rd most hit quarterback last year, and that took its toll. He had a rib injury that really limited him towards the end of the season. And then talking about the running game just in general, Kyren Williams was one of the most productive backs in 2023, 2024, that took a big step back, mostly because of the offensive line.
Okay, I'll go next. I think it will be noticeable if you're physically at training camp, but for those who aren't there to see it for themselves, the most underrated storyline is the return of the fullback to the Seahawks offense. I'm not exactly sure why the Seahawks got away from it for a majority of the last decade or so, especially because Pete Carroll always wanted to run the ball more often. But now, under Clint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator, they're emphasizing the running game. They're bringing back that hard-nosed running style and winning at the line of scrimmage, and doing so with not just extra tight ends, but also the fullback position. So we've now got Brady Russell, who they're converting from a tight end into a fullback, competing with a rookie, Robbie Oots, who played both tight end and fullback at Alabama. Listen, it's not the position competition that gets everybody excited this year, but whoever wins that spot, I think, is going to play a very big role this season that we haven't seen lately in Seattle. And I'll be honest, I am jealous of the 49ers and watching Kyle Juszczyk just dominate out there for so many years. Here in Seattle, we've had the Max Strongs and the Leonard Weavers, even Will Tukwuafu, who you also had in San Francisco, by the way, around the Super Bowl years. And to kind of get back to that kind of football, pretty exciting to me. Blake, what's the most underrated storyline with the Cardinals this year?
Yeah, I think it's the battle for the starting cornerback spot. A lot of attention has been on the defense this offseason for the Cardinals in free agency and in the draft, and especially on the linebacker spot with Josh Sweat and the edge and the defensive line. But looking at the back end, a big underrated note of this offseason was the loss of Sean Murphy-Bunting, their starting cornerback, to a non-football related injury, which could cost him his salary for this upcoming season. So he's going to be out for all of 2025. That kind of leaves the cornerback starting spot up for grabs. I know that Starling Thomas is coming back. He started in 15 of 17 games last season. But then for that other spot, you're looking at Max Melton and Will Johnson, each of the last 2 second-round picks for the Cardinals. Melton out of Rutgers last season played in all 17 games as a rookie, whereas you're looking at a guy like Will Johnson out of Michigan. A lot of people had questions about him coming into the draft because of some lower body evaluations that were made during the draft of how long that could last. But look, he was projected to be a first-round talent a couple of years ago, and very well could be the steal of the draft. He goes out and proved it, just signed his rookie deal. So I'm looking at the back end of the Cardinals defense to see how that's going to play out on the edges.
We will keep an eye on that this season as well. Next up, where does your team need to make the most progress over the next month and a half before the regular season begins? Ryan, you're first up this time. Where do the Rams need to make the most progress this year?
It's on defense. It's everything but the front four. So Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, all those guys up front, they're going to look great again, I'm sure. Everything else, though. Everything else. Linebackers, we got Nate Landman from Atlanta coming in. We've got Omar Spates, a former UDFA. We've got Chris Paul, who is a fifth-round draft pick. We've got Troy Reeder, who's never been a starter full-time in the NFL at linebacker. And then in the secondary, they didn't add anybody to that room through the draft or UDFAs. So we're going to go with 32-year-old Darius Williams and Akella Witherspoon coming off of another season with injuries. They've got some interesting safeties with Quentin Lake and Cam Curl and Cam Kinchins. But that was the Achilles heel, really, when it came down to it last year. Could not keep those deep, explosive passes. Could not stop the run sideline to sideline. So that's everything they got to work on back there.
Yeah, Akella Witherspoon just drive a stake through the heart of Seahawks fans, the former Seahawk, and then doing it to the Seahawks against the Cardinals in the last game of the regular season last year to clinch the division for Los Angeles. That was tough to watch. I will go next. It is no secret that the Seahawks offensive line once again under scrutiny, and it will be until they perform better. They drafted Gray Zabel with their first-round draft pick. He locks down the left guard position along with Charles Cross. So on the left side of the line is going to be pretty solid. You got a seemingly healthier Abe Lucas at right tackle. So honestly, listen, his health is going to be a huge factor for the Seahawks this season, but you still have question marks at the right guard position and at center. Basically three guys for one spot at right guard between Anthony Bradford, Christian Haynes, and Satoa Lomea, and a battle between Oluwatimi and Jalen Sundell at center. I'd love for those two spots to be just secured midway through training camp so all five of these guys can start to build a chemistry with one another. You got a brand new offensive line coach in John Benton, who also worked with Clint Kubiak in New Orleans. They're on the same page there. And really, the Seahawks will go this season as their offensive line goes because they need to run the ball. They need to protect Sam Darnold better than they protected Geno Smith last season because Darnold does not have the escapability that Geno had. So again, it's the offensive line that needs to make the most progress before the opener. Hopefully they can hit the ground running. Blake, you're next. Where do the Cardinals need to make the most progress before the regular season starts?
Yeah, I think it's showcasing an ability to force turnovers, being a ball-attacking defense. When you look at the Cardinals over the last two seasons, they've been in the back 20 of the NFL in forced turnovers, ranking 27th and 20th with 17 turnovers forced each of the last two seasons. And with this defense adding so many pieces with Josh Sweat and Walter Nolan, who we may not know if he's going to be in week one, how long time he may be missing with a calf injury that was just revealed by Jonathan Gannon yesterday on the first day of training camp. Ironically, Darius Robinson, their first-round pick defensive line from last year, also suffered a calf injury, so we'll see how much time that Walter Nolan will be missing. But now with Robinson back in the mix, as well as Budda Baker returning, Zaven Collins, Mac Wilson at the linebacker spots, this defense has the capability to create havoc, and it's really bulked up this offseason with a lot of new pieces. So being able to force turnovers, that's what they say. Turnover ratio historically has been the determining factor in wins and losses most of the time, and the Cardinals need to find a way to step up in that area this season.
And Keyshawn, the Niners come to Seattle on September 7th for their regular season opener. Where do they need to make the most progress before then?
Honestly, Aaron, it's just simply getting all the rookies up to speed. Kyle Shanahan, he mentioned this during his press conference. He said straight up, this is the first time since 2018 that this is probably going to have so many position battles on their team because over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, they've been so top-heavy with seasoned veterans, but after a couple of free agencies, they're pretty much gone. So it's like I could think of the safety position, the linebacker spot, defensive end, and then the three technique, the other defensive tackle, wide receiver. The list goes on. So whoever can get up to speed and get acquainted with the Robert Saleh defense or Shanahan's offense can really do well for the Niners, coming into that Seattle game week 1.
Cannot wait for that game. Wish it were tomorrow. Question number 4. Does your team have a scrimmage or joint practices planned with a different team during training camp? And are you a fan of doing that? Why or why not? Blake, back to you in Arizona. Are the Cardinals doing anything like that this year?
Yes, the Cardinals are going to be having a joint practice with the Denver Broncos on August 14th, just a couple of days ahead of their preseason game, the second preseason game for the Cardinals. And look, I'm personally a fan of this. Jonathan Gannon is a fan of this. He's very admirable of Sean Payton and what he's doing there, and he just thinks adapting to the altitude there, it's a good challenge. It's a good way to kind of bounce ideas together with fellow teams around the NFL when stakes aren't super high yet with things being in the preseason. I think it's a good way for players and coaches to get a different look at different personnels and different ways that teams go about things in a practice setting as opposed to game day when you're totally focused on going against your opponents. I like the idea of it.
Yeah, I know it's just a preseason game in Denver, but if you look historically in the first 2 weeks of the regular season, games played in Denver, the Broncos have a huge advantage because of the altitude and because of the weather, the summer weather being so hot there early on in the season. Keyshawn, you're next. What do the Niners have planned, if anything, outside of their preseason games? And do you like joint scrimmages or practices?
Well, and you just mentioned the Denver Broncos. We plan to see them pretty soon when they come down to Santa Clara, which is going to be really fun, as we talked about many times on this show, because you got Drake Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, who are Denver Broncos, coming back to play some of their former teammates. And even today, I just came across a report when we play against the Raiders in Vegas a couple weeks for joint practices. Max Crosby already put out bulletin board material in July by saying, I'm going to put on a show against the Niners. But, Aaron, I love this idea of joint practices because, for the most part, most of the starters and vets don't even play preseason games. They probably get a series, maybe a couple snaps, but this is where you can really see the ones going against the ones in some competitive practices. So, yes, I love the idea of joint practices. I actually think they're more important than preseason games, in my opinion.
So, Keyshawn, I'm going to give you the flip side of that. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of joint practices or scrimmages. The problem, though, is the way the Seahawks do them, similar to what you were mentioning with the Niners. Last year, the Hawks did so in Tennessee before their preseason game there. This year, they're going to practice with the Green Bay Packers before playing their preseason game in Green Bay. The issue that I have is exactly what Keyshawn just said. The practices are behind closed doors. No cameras are allowed. And then you're getting the ones against the ones in those practices, along with some, experimental plays. But then in the actual preseason game itself, which everybody gets to see, we're only getting the vanilla offenses and the vanilla defenses and mostly the second and third string players. So for the teams themselves, it is a net positive because they're actually able to see how they stack up against a different opponent with their best players. But from a fan perspective, it's like we're getting the short end of the stick. It's another reason why I'm in favor of fewer preseason games and additional regular season games, which I know the owners in league wants, but it's something the players are going to have to sign off on before they eventually move to an 18-game schedule. Yeah.
So, Aaron, let me ask you a question real quick. Would you advise the league to probably just eliminate a preseason game and probably televise a joint practice instead?
I'd love to see that. But again, the reason they do it is because it's behind closed doors, because they don't want to give up any of their secrets going into the regular season. So I understand that, but I'd just love to see more ones against ones in the month of August at the very least, or just get rid of the preseason game and see more ones against ones in an actual regular season game. Ryan, what do the Rams have planned, if anything, during camp?
Yeah, they're going against the Cowboys and Chargers, who are both down here in Southern California with their training camps as well. And really, it's the first time that McVay really lets his dogs loose. They're highly competitive. They often end in some sort of scrum or some sort of scuffle or something like that. Just a couple of years ago, Aaron Donald had a Bengals helmet in each of his hands, ready to swing. They really let loose and they have a lot of fun with it. So I'm 100% in favor of it. McVay plays none of his starters whatsoever. We don't get any glimpses of those in the preseason. He runs very light and deliberate practices. He doesn't want to see anybody injured on the practice field during training camp. So these are the two opportunities where actually these guys who are trained to hit people get to go out and hit people and enjoy themselves in their profession in that way.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes from all the players during preseason after a bunch of training camp practices is, we just can't wait to hit somebody from a different team. They're tired of going up against the same guys day after day. Finally, we do have time for our last topic. We're going to be getting into fantasy football more often as we get closer to the end of August and when people are drafting their teams. But how about an early look at this one? Give me a sleeper fantasy football selection on your team this season. Keyshawn, who should I keep an eye on when it comes to the Niners this year?
So coming into today, Aaron, I actually was going to say Ricky Pearsall, but I just came across a report just now on my phone on Twitter. I guess it might be Isaiah Nair, the rookie I just talked about from Nebraska. They say he completely stole the show today at practice. So that's gonna be something fun to really watch. But I'm gonna go with my original answer. I'm gonna say Ricky Pearsall for now, if he stays healthy, just because Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle are the focal point on the offense right now, and I believe that that's going to create more opportunities for Ricky Pearsall because he'll have more one-on-one coverage with the number 2 and number 3 corner since Juwan Jennings is coming off a productive season, and now defensive teams going to be scheming against Jennings to try to take him away. So Pearsall will get a lot more one-on-one opportunities, so he'll be a sleeper in fantasy this year.
Okay, Pearsall is now on my list. As for the Seahawks, I'm very proud of my pick of Jackson Smith and Jigba last season, only because what we saw in OTAs and minicamp and training camp actually came to fruition during the year. He had a breakout season, 100 catches, more than 1,100 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns. This year, it's a little harder for me to find that guy. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Zach Charbonnet. A lot of people say that this is a make-or-break year for Ken Walker III. I'm not completely sold on how he fits in this offense and style of running game. Charbonnet could be the ideal fit instead, and I think they're going to lean on him even more this upcoming season. I'm not telling you to use a pick on him in maybe the first 7 or 8 rounds of your draft, but he could be a very sneaky good selection in the 9th round or later. He had 8 touchdowns last year. His average of more than 4 yards per attempt has been solid the last couple of seasons, and now he's in a new offense that favors his style even more. I'm going with Zach Charbonnet as a decent sleeper pick for fantasy football this upcoming season. Ryan, you're next. Who's a good sleeper pick for the Rams for fantasy football this year?
As I mentioned, Kyren Williams earlier was very productive and highly used running back last year. Now, I would say he's a safe pick, but he's not going to be used quite as much. They're going to try to use Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter, and I'm going to pin Jarquez Hunter as the sleeper. He adds an explosive ability to this Rams offense that they haven't had in the backfield since Todd Gurley, I would argue. So I would keep an eye on him. They're going to use more 21 personnel packages, and they're going to use a guy like Hunter on those, 3rd and long distances where he can kind of pick up some garbage yards.
Cool. And Blake, we started with you. We'll end with you as well. Give me your sleeper fantasy football pick on the Cardinals this season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 3rd-year wide receiver Michael Wilson. A lot of the attention now is going to be on Trey McBride after his breakout campaign last season and especially getting his bag this offseason. We know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is trending in the right direction, but when you think about Michael Wilson, he's been in this mix as well. He was 2nd on the team behind Harrison Jr. in touchdowns last season, and he's been right there with Kyler Murray in the offseason each of the past couple of years, going on the Los Angeles trip and getting that extra chemistry built up over the offseason and over the summer. So I think that connection is kindling toward, a fiery season for Michael Wilson.
Proving you can never go wrong with a Stanford Cardinal alum. This feels like just the beginning, guys. The tip of the iceberg as training camps get underway this week across the NFL. 6 more weeks of overreaction to come before the regular season starts, and then we can overreact even more once the regular season does begin. That's going to do it for us. A reminder to check out all of our respective Fox websites for more coverage, and also the LAFB network for Rams coverage as well. For Blake Neiman in Phoenix, Keyshawn Ward in the Bay Area, and Ryan Anderson in Los Angeles, I'm Aaron Levine in Seattle. We will see you next week here on the NFC West Huddle.